All right, it's that time of the week, time for your favorite show, the NFC West Huddle. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's where we go around to each market in the NFC West and check in on each team. Of course, in Seattle, we got our guy, Aaron Levine, and in San Francisco, it's Keyshawn Ward. Over in L.A., representing the Rams, it's Ryan Dyrud, and of course, here in Phoenix, I'm Richard Sines, representing the Arizona Cardinals and my fantasy football team, the Chimichangas, a bit of a dynasty, right? We're getting to the good stuff, people. We're finally, hallelujah, playing some games, right? We had the first preseason game. I know it's just a preseason, but I'll take it because that means we're one step closer to the regular season. So I want to find out what you guys thought about that first preseason game. What are your takeaways? Let's go to Seattle. Aaron, what are your thoughts on Seattle's first preseason game? You guys played on a Thursday night, couldn't wait for the weekend like everybody else.
Yeah, and also a 23-23 tie. I know everybody was excited about that. Listen, it's always tough to evaluate an entire team when most of your starters aren't playing, so I'm pretty excited to see more of them play this week. But my biggest takeaway from last week is that most of the players who have been stepping up in training camp also stepped up in the game. Most notably, receiver Torrey Horton, who had 3 catches and a touchdown. This is a guy who has been taking a ton of first-team reps as a rookie with Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba ahead of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. A lot was made when Rick Woolen nicknamed Horton Jerry Rice Jr. before the game. But this is a guy who might have been a steal on draft day. He went in the 5th round, but only because of a horrible injury last fall, which involved a knee ligament and a hamstring that he said came off of the bone. A couple draft analysts actually had him as a top 50 pick if the injury wasn't an issue, and it doesn't seem to be affecting him at all this season, at least so far. So we're looking at second-round talent here, and I can't wait to see more of him the next couple of games. We also saw a solid game from Elijah Arroyo, Gray Zabel, and also George Holani. How about 61 yards on just 7 carries? That's an early indication that the running game emphasis is going to be paying off this season, whoever is running the football. And then defensively, 2 interceptions, one by Josh Jobe, another by Nehemiah Pritchett. They are deep in the secondary this year. And finally, I know this is fairly common throughout the preseason, but the team camaraderie very apparent right now. After both interceptions, the entire sideline came onto the field to celebrate. It prompted flags both times. Listen, I don't mind those penalties during the preseason. It shows these guys are united and really rooting for all of their teammates. So all in all, really good vibes after preseason game number 1.
Yeah, and you're right. I do like the team chemistry aspect, right? Because you got to work on chemistry because they're always new guys, right? Especially in key positions. So that's good to see for the Seattle Seahawks. And, of course, you want your core players back. Of course, in San Francisco, I mean, you guys were the walking wounded out there, Keyshawn. So it's nice to see guys healthy, I guess, over in San Fran. What are your takeaways from the first preseason game?
Man, Richard, the Niners came out fired up on both sides of the ball. We had Mac Jones lead the Niners on a 75 or 74-yard scoring drive. We had a beautiful slot fade to rookie wide receiver Jordan Watkins that ended with Patrick Taylor, the running back, in a 5-yard touchdown. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Chase Lucas, the backup nickel, man, he forced a safety on Bo Nix, had him running backwards into the end zone. So that was a great watch. And then, you know, Lucas had a couple of pass breakups, but then after that, once the starters, or I don't say starters, but the second string players in the Niners, once they got out of the game just kind of got fizzled out, and there's a lot of mistakes on both sides of the ball. But I will say, you know, the Niners, they've had a lot of praise with some of their rookies, but the one that really stood out was Marquise Siegel. I keep calling him Marcus. Marquise Siegel. Man, he had a couple of great open field tackles, big hits on the sideline. And then even after that game, he earned first team reps with the Niners. So things looking really good for him so far in training camp. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how things will kind of unfold as camp goes on. But, yeah, you know, had a great start, but kind of fizzled out towards the end of the game.
All right, over in L.A., we've got Ryan Dyrud. Ryan, this is the first time we've been on the show together. We were supposed to be on the show a couple weeks ago when you were at training camp, but then I saw your limo pulled up, and then you said, I'm out of here, and you took off in your limo. I said, oh, he's from L.A. You're originally Colorado, but you already taken to L.A. You're an L.A. guy through and through. I saw you big-timing us already, so thanks for gracing us with your presence this time around. Give us your thoughts on the Rams' first preseason game. Let me guess, you guys are going to win the Super Bowl already?
Yeah, I don't know. And Richard, I don't know about a limo, but yeah, good to be with you and officially meet you. And unlike all you guys in the NFC West, we won't have the luxury of ever seeing any starters in preseason. So we got to take what we can get. And last week, I did think we got some good things out of it. Didn't even see backup quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. We got to see our third stringer, Stetson Bennett, for the entirety of the game. And I think the takeaway with him was a little bit of development, a little bit of improvement. Obviously, he's not like the quarterback of the future, but the question that we've been posing here in LA is he the backup of the future? Like, can he be a second stringer for years to come? And I think he proved a lot in this game now in year 3 through his development and kind of the control and poise and his pocket awareness and pocket presence in this game. So I thought he looked real good. You look at rookie Jarquez Hunter, we've talked about him a lot. The coaches have raved about him. His teammates have raved about him. 4th-round pick out of Auburn. He's just a downhill runner, smash mouth type of guy that loves to have the ball in his hand, and we saw that against the Cowboys last week. So he's another bright spot that we'll continue to watch through preseason. And knowing the Rams, if he shows out again this week, we probably won't see him the rest of preseason. So they'll just go to their 4th, 5th, and 6th string running backs for the rest of the time. On defense, you know, we talked last week, Richard, I know you weren't with us, but one of the position groups I was watching was the secondary because there's a lot of question marks kind of with that group. And I think what we saw, and this is going to sound kind of weird, it may be the weakest group, but it may also be the deepest group. I just think the separation from starters to the backups is really not that great, but it's a very deep group. So there's going to be a lot of tough decisions on who actually gets cut during these cut down days coming here soon. So Cam Lampkin had an interception. I thought they were playing well on the ball all game long against the Dallas Cowboys receiving corps. So I saw some good things from that from that secondary group. And, you know, we'll see moving forward. Obviously, the big talk in LA, which maybe we'll get to, is the injuries and Matthew Stafford and whether we'll see him even in practice. Obviously, won't see him in a game. But overall, from last week's game performance, thought we saw some good things from essentially the third group.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely get to the Stafford situation in a minute. But I want to go back to you being humble and downplaying the limo thing, because it was a stretch limo too. I was like, wow, Ryan's got it like that. I even wrote it in my diary. I'm like, Ryan is a big timer, stretch limo. But see, when you're as short as I am, I can get in a PT Cruiser and it feels like a limo. So I'm great. I'm good either way, right? So everything's good here in Phoenix. Hey, we actually had the starters play for the Arizona Cardinals, and that's kind of cool because in the last couple of years under Jonathan Gannon, the starters had not played at all. And they took on the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that normally plays their starters, and it seems to work, right? I know we talked about this on other shows where it all depends on the coach and what they feel they need. And this time around, Jonathan Gannon said, I think it's okay. It's needed to play their starters. I guess he felt comfortable with the starters, especially Kyler Murray, you know, with the system that they've implemented since they got here. And so far, I liked what I saw from the starters. I know Kyler Murray threw the interception. People jumped on him right away, but they were moving the ball. They played 2 series, the starters did. They moved the ball. Kyler Murray went 7 for 8, connected with Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. on a couple drives. And after that interception deep in Kansas City territory, the starters came back for the Cardinals and drove the ball again down in the field goal range and finished on a high note, kicking a field goal. Jonathan Gannon said he thought about going for it on 4th down, but I guess he wanted to see what his special teams can do. And then when you look at the backup, Jacoby Brissett, I think did a great job with his first run with the Arizona Cardinals. And Trey Benson, the running back, who's going to spell James Conner maybe more than he did last year, got a lot of touches. They're going to see what he can do and hope he can kind of keep James Conner fresh late in the season. So I kind of liked what I saw so far in the first preseason game. The Cardinals have already said they're probably not going to play their starters in week 2 of the preseason, maybe because they like what they saw already. They got enough. They're having a joint practice as we speak with the Denver Broncos, and a lot of times that kind of serves as a extra preseason game already. So I've noticed a lot of different teams are starting to do that, these joint practices. It adds to the intensity, mixes things up a bit. And one thing I noticed in that first preseason game was the backup for the Kansas City Chiefs was Gardner Minshew. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty good backup. And then I was like, hey, the Cardinals have a good backup in Jacoby Brissett. You mentioned, Ryan, about Matthew Stafford and his injury. And then I looked up and I'm like, oh, well, you guys got a pretty good backup in Jimmy GQ, right? Jimmy Garoppolo. So that made me think, I want to ask you guys, and I'll start with you, Ryan. What do you think about your backup quarterback? And who do you feel has the best backup in the division?
Yeah, well, I don't know why. Maybe the Seattle fans will like us. I'm a huge Drew Lock stan. I've always loved Drew Lock since he was at Missouri and gets drafted by the Broncos in the second round. Obviously hasn't panned out for him, but I do think the guy's talented. But unbiased aside, I think it's pretty obvious the quarterback that's actually led a team to the Super Bowl in Jimmy GQ, like you mentioned, Richard, has to be probably the best backup in the division just because he's been there, done that. Now, I don't like the prospects of him having to potentially start games with this mysterious Matthew Stafford back injury. I think there is a pretty big drop-off from Stafford to Jimmy G. But I think when you just look at as the QB2 situation around the league, I mean, Jimmy G might be the best backup quarterback in the NFL, you could argue. So, I mean, he obviously is a professional, been in the league, a vet for quite some time. As I mentioned, been there, done that, had playoff wins, have beaten these Rams multiple times when he was with the Niners, and then obviously led his team to a Super Bowl and had to play against Patrick Mahomes. So I think overall, Jimmy G, you feel good as him as a backup. Do you feel good about him having to start games with Stafford on the mend? I don't know about that necessarily, but he can definitely spot start and at least get this team some wins if necessary.
All right, Aaron in Seattle, are you going to take that from Brian? He's already saying that they got the best backup. You know, they're already riding in limos and talking Super Bowl over there in L.A. But you guys have a backup as a starter in Sam Darnold. So what about the backup to your backup?
Oh, that's
what do you think about your quarterback situation?
Really, really funny. First, I want to give a shout-out to Ryan and the LAFB network because I'm a big fan that he gave a big shout-out to Drew Lock just now, even though Lock really hasn't done much in the NFL so far. Listen, I'll just say I'm glad Matthew Stafford is not the Seahawks starter right now because if there were injury concerns with Sam Darnold, especially at the start of this season, the Seahawks would be in big trouble. Listen, Drew Lock is a nice story. He's consistently a couple bad decisions from being an average quarterback in this league. The problem is those bad decisions happen almost every time he's on the field. I mean, we saw it with another interception in preseason game 1 last week. I think he's in a much better situation back here in Seattle than he was with the Giants last year, but I don't think that's really saying much. It's also the reason the Seahawks will likely be keeping 3 quarterbacks on their roster because rookie Jalen Milroe isn't ready just yet to play in the NFL right now as a starting quarterback. I think Milroe might have the highest upside of those 3 guys here in Seattle, and he might be great in spot situations and have certain packages this upcoming season, but it's going to take him a couple years to learn before he can reach his true potential. As for the best backup in the division, I agree about Jimmy Garoppolo. Also, probably a draw between Mac Jones and Jacoby Brissett. Brissett might be the safer option because he has more experience between those two. But I think the upside is higher with Mac Jones, even though his numbers have actually declined since his rookie season. He's younger, and frankly, I think the Niners' offense can function better without Brock Purdy than the Cardinals' offense can function without Kyler Murray. So I'm going to lean toward Jones in that one. But, of course, Jimmy G on top, and then Jones over Jacoby Brissett in the race for second place.
You know, and I like Drew Lock. I think he did well. You know, in college at Missouri, he was decent with the Broncos. So I think that's a pretty good backup. But I like the Milroe kid over there in Seattle because, you know, I think Sam Darnold is just a guy, right? Geno wasn't the guy. Sam is just a guy. So I kind of am intrigued to see what's going to happen with that rookie over there in Seattle. And I think you guys are doing it right in Seattle and letting him kind of sit behind some established guys and watch and learn. Because when you look at, you know, quarterbacks that have had success in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, they sat for a while. Tom Brady, they all sat for a while and kind of watched a functioning offense and a good established quarterback, you know, lead the way for at least a year, and I think it's worked. So I'm intrigued about that rookie over there in Seattle. Of course, as you can tell, I can better than Sam Darnold, that's for sure. All right, Keyshawn, what are your thoughts with San Francisco and your quarterback situation?
You know what, Richard? I'm actually going to go with Mac Jones. You guys brought up some excellent points. I almost forgot Jimmy G did lead the Niners to the Super Bowl. But the problem is he don't ever stay healthy. So I wouldn't even feel comfortable making him my best backup because he could do spot duty and probably be out for 4 or 5 games, stumbling over his toe or something. So I'm going to go with Mac Jones just because he's a lot younger. He actually led a team to a playoffs back in his rookie season. Now, his numbers have declined. He does have a turnover issue, but I trust in the Niners system, similar to what Sam Darnold went through when he was a Niners backup, where he can still orchestrate the offense, still make them viable, and have them put points on the board. And Jacoby Brissett, yeah, he has a lot of experience as a backup, but the problem is, if I had him play multiple games for the Cardinals, he probably only get 1 or 2 wins in an 8-game stretch. So, yeah, I think that Mac Jones probably the best backup. Then I'll go Jimmy G and then Jacoby Brissett in last place. I think we all know who it is. It's Drew Lock, just because he's not really, consistent or reliant. And then also, I think Jalen Milroe could be the best, but he's a project right now. So that's my order right now as far as the backups in NFC West.
All right, Keyshawn, you saved yourself with the Milroe comment, because I was about to say, look, I don't care about your biceps. I don't care if you wear the Schmedium T-shirt. You're wrong. Mac Jones is not the best backup in this division. I think he's the worst backup in the division. I think Drew Lock's better than him. Good thing we're not bench pressing here. But I think it's Jimmy GQ. He's obviously the best backup. You got to give him. I mean, he took the Niners to the Super Bowl. He had them. He had the Chiefs. They were about to win the Super Bowl.
Richard. Let's calm down with Tate.
Yeah, I'm listening. I got these big ears. I can hear.
In spite of him, it was a team. It was a team, not Jimmy G. It was a team.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people in San Francisco are saying. But he got him there, and he played well enough to get you guys in the Super Bowl. And as a backup, that's what you want, right? You want a guy that can run an offense and not mess it up to the point where you're not winning. And I think Jacoby Brissett can do that for Seattle. I think Drew Lock is also a decent backup, but he's also backing up a guy who's a backup already. So I like Jacoby Brissett. I like the fact that he's been established as a starter. He's won some games. But I'm going to go Jimmy GQ. And I think Mac Jones. But Milroe, that's the guy I want to see. So, you could lose your starting quarterback. You got to have a good backup, right? And that goes for every position. So that's why I wanted to ask you guys, other than quarterback, what is the one guy for the team that you guys cover that you cannot afford to lose? Because if he goes down, oh boy, you're going to be scrambling. So Ryan in LA, who's that one player for you guys over there?
Well, this is such an interesting question, Richard, because when you look at the Rams, it's so compounded right now because obviously Matthew Stafford's in flux with this aggravated back disc. And so, I think he's on track to play week 1. I think he will play. The big question is, what's his recovery timeline like? But when you look at your quarterback who's banged up, who's probably the most important player for a right-handed quarterback? Oh, it's the left tackle. And guess what? The Rams starting left tackle, Alaric Jackson, is dealing with blood clots and probably is not on track to start the season. So he would be my say of that's the most important player. If he goes down, then you're looking at who you know well, Richard, DJ Humphries, to slot in as the starting left tackle in week 1. But that's looking like that's going to happen. So to answer your question, I think I'll go with Jared Verse on the defensive side because with all these questions on offense, you want to have a stout defense, and the defensive line has been a wrecking crew in training camp. They have gave the offense fits. They've had now a joint practice with the Cowboys just today. They had joint practice with the New Orleans Saints down in Costa Mesa area, or Carson area, excuse me. And all indications were that they gave fits to the New Orleans Saints offense as well. So Jared Verse is the orchestrator of that. He is the man that makes that engine go. And you look at Jared Verse, you look at Byron Young, you look at Kobe Turner, you look at Poona Ford, your starting 4 are great. After those 2 edge guys, you're looking at a rookie in Josiah Stewart out of Michigan, who I'm very high on, but he's your rookie right now as your edge 3. So if Jared Verse were to go down, there would certainly be a drop-off in pressures and in sack production. And with the offense in flux right now, you need the defense to be on par getting after the quarterback. So for me, aside from Stafford, aside from Alaric Jackson, I'll go with Jared Verse.
Man, you brought up DJ Humphries. I love DJ. Tell Hump I said what's up. He's a great guy. He's a good teammate, and he's going to be a great addition to that locker room. All right, Aaron, over there in Seattle, who's the one guy you guys can't afford to lose? I know you guys got a very good defense out there. Is it somebody on the defensive side of football, or is it your running back? I know you guys like to ground and pound out there. Who's the one guy you guys can't afford to lose?
Yeah, I would lean to somebody on the defensive side of the ball and somebody that Ryan and everybody in LA is very familiar with. I think it's Ernest Jones IV. I mean, this defense was struggling last season before he got here from Tennessee. Then he had 47 tackles in his first 4 games in Seattle. It was instant impact on this defense. He had a huge role in turning that around. 94 total tackles in his 9 games in Seattle. It's a huge reason they made it a priority to re-sign him this offseason, and it really works both ways. He wanted to be in Seattle also. I mean, he signed a 3-year deal worth up to $33 million with just $15 million guaranteed. That's a very team-friendly contract for those kinds of stats at the linebacker position. I would say it's Ernest Jones. Also, a close second would be Abe Lucas on the offensive line, because the O-line situation in Seattle is already tenuous, and we saw the impact Abe Lucas had on the line when he finally returned last season, and we know he wasn't even close to 100%. So if the Hawks can get Abe Lucas at 80 to 90% this season and he plays most of their games, that'll be a huge boost to the offensive line and specifically the running game.
You know, it's funny, I always make fun of people that ask a trivia question and then they don't know the answer. And that was me with this particular question, because I'm the one that put in the question. Then I'm like, I couldn't really answer. I was having a tough time. I was thinking, well, Buda Baker, you know, on defense, he's kind of the heart and soul of that secondary. And then they've got young corners, so he's important. But then I was thinking, well, you know, the bell cow, right, the guy that really sets the tone for the Arizona Cardinals on both sides of the football, just because of the way he plays, is James Conner. And he was the guy that you could always count on, that was going to run hard, you know, run somebody over, get guys pumped up on both sides of the football, right? He's the guy that just, he runs, and everybody's like, oh, yeah, here we go. And he's that guy that shows up each and every week and is the guy that motivates everybody, makes the players around him better. So I say it's James Conner, the lead back for the Arizona Cardinals. And it's not just because he was on the Chimichangas, my fantasy team, and did well for us last year. He did well for the Cardinals, too. And I know Trey Benson is the backup, and they took a high draft pick on him. They're invested in him, and they're really showing him that they're going to give him the ball in this preseason, right, to see what he can do, to see if he can spell James Conner. I kind of mentioned that earlier, to kind of make, you know, sure that James fresh late in the year, because you want him late in the year where they kind of seem to taper off, the Cardinals do. So I know they're giving him a lot of touches here in the preseason, but I want to see Trey Benson do it in the regular season. So, you know, I'm still kind of worried. If James Conner goes down, I'm not sure if Trey Benson is that guy just yet. I would like to see him be that guy. He's had a couple flashes in the preseason and training camp, but I need to see it when the lights are brightest. So I think it's James Conner is the guy the Cardinals cannot afford to lose. If that happens, I would be a little worried, as opposed to other people, right?
Richard,
over in San Francisco, Keyshawn.
Richard, it's not hard to spell James Conner. That's Jamesconner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how hard can it be?
You know, I didn't go to Stanford.
Yeah.
Not all of us went to Stanford. I did go to a private school in Conner where I could pray for him. I maybe can't, you know, spell his name sometimes. So you got to give me a little bit of a break, right? We're not all Stanford guys, you know. Keyshawn, you're at least close to Stanford, so you got to be smarter than I am. What are your thoughts on who you guys can't afford to lose?
Oh my God, we saw it last year. I got to say Christian McCaffrey, because, you know, he's not only one of the best players in the NFL, but he's probably the best running back in the entire league when he's fully healthy. I mean, just looking at the numbers, the Niners are 27-10, and they average 27.2 points per game when he's on the field. So you felt his impact last year because he missed multiple games, pretty much the whole season, when he went 6-11, I believe. So yeah, you cannot have Christian McCaffrey missing a bunch of games. And then also, I mean, look at the amount of injuries we have in our wide receiver room right now. I can make an argument that Christian McCaffrey is probably our best wide receiver. Now, I know people are probably thinking, no, George Kittle, but you can really get, you know, McCaffrey the ball anywhere on the field, whether it's in the slot, in the backfield, or even line up on the outside. So, yeah, we cannot lose McCaffrey. Close second is Trent Williams, because you got to protect Brock Purdy. But I got to go with Christian McCaffrey, who's probably one of the best players in the league when healthy.
All right, now we got to talk about something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and that's Geno Smith. But maybe I can't spell James, but I can spell Geno. You guys know that, right? And his interaction with the fan, and I know that one particular fan for Seattle is the kind of guy that makes these signs that tries to get under your skin. But to compare Geno, you know me, I've been hard on Geno, right? He's not that guy, but he's better than Jamarcus Russell. I'll tell you that. And that's the thing. You got to give Geno credit. He's done the best with his skill set, right? He's had a great career. So I even wrote it in my diary when Geno had to, you know, give that guy the one-finger salute. And you know, you're thinking like, wow, you know, do fans cross the line, and how do you keep fans from crossing the line? And I even wrote in my diary a letter to Geno. I said, look, Geno, you're not that bad. I mean, come on. You're better than Russell, that's for sure, right? You're not a bust. You may be a backup starting, and you're not I think he's better than Sam Darnold. I'll tell you that right now. And so I wanted to ask you guys now, Aaron, since that's your guy, you guys had the bromance. What do you think about that whole incident and the sign? You probably, are familiar with that fan and fans crossing the line.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know what else was said by the fan, and if that fan actually said something offensive or out of bounds, I think Geno has every right to do what he did. Also, you mentioned, Richard, I believe that is a fan who is notorious for heckling opposing players and getting a rise out of them. So I'm not going to defend that specific fan in particular. But in general, the content of that sign itself, what did it say? It said, bigger bust, Geno or Jamarcus Russell. If I was Geno Smith, I would have laughed that off. I would have started cracking up. Jamarcus Russell is easily one of the biggest busts in the history of the league, a top overall pick, didn't last more than 3 seasons. And then you have Geno Smith, who is an absolute survivor in this league. He revived his career here in Seattle. And despite all the hate from Richard, he was the guy here for a few seasons. So for him to take offense to that, I feel like it's some pretty thin skin. And Alyssa Charleston-Smith made a really good point in our sports office. Listen, Geno is a quarterback, and quarterbacks are put under more scrutiny than any other position. He should be used to the heckling by now. So again, if something was said that was out of bounds, fine. But if it was just because of what was on that sign, I think it's pretty ridiculous on Geno's part.
Yeah, and look, I don't hate Geno. I was just keeping it real. I drink water. I don't drink haterade. I just keep it real, Aaron, that's all. And I think also with social media, things get blown out of proportion. In years past, that was an incident that probably happened, I don't know how many times, but nobody saw it over and over and over again. So, Ryan, you guys got some crazies out there in L.A. What are your thoughts on fans crossing the line and this whole Geno incident?
Yeah, I mean, like Ethan said, no idea if anything was said. Obviously, that can escalate the moment. But just based on the sign, I mean, I would have taken my $67 million career earnings and just laughed my way down the locker room. I don't think that constitutes a bust. If I'm made almost $100 million over my career, I think I've done pretty well over 11 years if I was Geno Smith. So, this is a conversation always with fans and what is crossing the line. I think I'm one of those guys as a fan myself. I think clean heckling, signs like that, I think is fine. I think that's kind of part of the game, part of why you get paid the big bucks. Obviously, there is a line when you're looking at harassment and discrimination, all that. That's a whole nother conversation of how you ring those in and how you ban those fans and whatnot, and what we've seen kind of other leagues do in the past. So I don't know if this was one of those. Again, if I'm Geno Smith, I'm not taking really any offense to that because I've proven I'm not a bigger bust. Like, Jamarcus Russell didn't even make it out of his rookie contract, so I think that the writing's on the wall there, whether it was on the sign or on the wall. I've proven it. So, funny situation. As you said, Richard, I think because of social media, this is something that blows up. I always think about this all the time, like all these instances, like what these guys 10, 15, even 7 years ago, like what they probably got away with that you can't now, that we all see under a microscope is kind of fascinating. And Geno, remember his career started with getting in like a locker room fight where he got knocked out by his teammate. that disappeared after a few weeks. So it's funny now that this gets juxtaposed so much.
Yeah, and the funny thing is we've probably gotten heckled. Well, all of us except for Keyshawn, because when you have the biceps and you're wearing the shirt that's 2 sizes too small to show them off like that, nobody's going to heckle you. Nobody's going to want to fight you, especially your teammate or fans. So, Keyshawn, I don't even know if you can answer this question, but what are your thoughts on what happened between Geno? I'm sure that would have never happened to you, but what are your thoughts on what happened with Geno and that fans crossing the line?
Richard, I loved it, man. I get kind of sick and tired of fans heckling the players and not expecting a reaction because, yeah, you guys brought some excellent points saying that we don't know what was really said. Was it really warranted for Geno to react that way? But I've just seen time and time again where, like, even back in 2015 when LeBron's playing the Warriors, some fans said, like, LeBron's a boom, 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 boom. It was like a lot of profanity. It was kind of unnecessary. It's kind of like, why do you even say that? I know you're into the game, you want your team to win, but sometimes the fans take it too far. Or even Russell Westbrook walking into the tunnel, people throwing water bottles at him. I just think sometimes the fans cross the line. So, yeah, maybe sometimes they deserve the double bird. I mean, I just got to call it what it is. So I don't really have an issue with it. Now, granted, yeah, he's a quarterback. He's a little more scrutinized. You got to kind of keep an idea of, like, you got to kind of keep yourself professional at all times, especially in that position. But, man, I'm going to side with the players more than likely because I just feel like they're under scrutiny every single day, especially in this social media era where they could do one thing and it becomes a meme or goes viral, and now it's like a part of their entire career. So I'm all for players responding to fans. I'm sorry. As long as nobody's being harmed or physically assaulted, I'm all for anything.
Yeah, and I like that you said the double bird, not just the bird, but you're going to get a double bird. That's when you really mean it. I kind of like that term. You know, sometimes people deserve the double bird. You know, and it's funny because that fan has had history even with the Cardinals. I remember he had a sign that said it was for Bruce Arians. He said the Cardinals quit on Ken Whisenhunt, and they're going to quit on you too. And then the Cardinals actually won that game, and Bruce Arians went back and kind of gave it to that fan, and he took it. So it was kind of an interesting exchange there. And sometimes it could be all good and fun, and sometimes it can get out of hand. But who knows? Maybe that fan liked getting the double bird. You know, some guys they want that kind of reaction, like Ryan said, right? So it was great to get all of your reactions, and I just want to say, Geno was not that guy, but he was the guy when he played for the Cardinals. So I'm kind of glad he's gone. We'll see if Sam Darnold can give the Cardinals a break, because Geno never did, that's for sure. So give me a break, right, for hating on. I wasn't even hating on Geno, Aaron. I don't know why you had to say that, right? But anyway, we'll talk about this and much more next week. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one, guys.